All right, good morning, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get started now. So, welcome to the OVS VAP Training Center webinar, Transitioning Your Team to the New Normal. I'm Blake Cush, the Director of Training and Outreach at OVS. In the coming weeks, many regions of New York State will have officially started their transition forward on the way to reopening and a return to in-office and in-person work. We understand that this is a time of transition that comes with excitement, challenges, and questions, and we're here to support you. So today's webinar is the first in our new Transition Forward webinar series, which was developed with the goal of helping you tackle some of these unique challenges. A full list of these trainings offered in the new Transition Forward webinar series is on your screen, or will be, and you can also learn about it on our website at ovs.ny.gov/training. Each webinar, including today's, is recorded, and the links are made available on that same training page. And they can also be accessed via our OVS Training YouTube channel. So as soon as you exit today's webinar, you'll be automatically redirected to an evaluation survey on the presentation. It's about an 11-question SurveyMonkey eval. Please take a couple minutes to give us your feedback, and you also have an opportunity to notify us if you're interested in learning more information about similar topics. That feedback is super valuable to us, and it helps us shape and make changes from week to week when we're doing webinars in a new series as well. So it's super crucial and greatly appreciated. Finally, today's webinar will be led by Jennifer Amstutz of JA Strategies and Alan Krieger of Krieger Solutions. Ginny and Alan have more than 40 years of combined experience in consulting and training, working with nonprofits and agencies around the New York State, and have both served as executive directors of nonprofit organizations and have master's degrees in management. Yeah, I'd like to formally welcome Ginny and Alan.
Thanks, Blake. We're really happy to be here. I am going to just, we'll probably end up turning off our cameras so that you can focus on what's going on. And so what we're going to do now is, I know that everybody is pretty much a pro at WebEx by now if you've done a lot of these webinars already. But just in case, I just want to walk through a few of the features so everybody can actively engage. So if you move your cursor to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a menu that pops up, or you may be able to see it right now. And in the center is a blue or a black icon with a bubble in the middle. So if it's black and you click on it, your chat box will be open. If it's blue, your chat box already is open, and you'll be able to see it over on the right side of your screen. So look over there to the right now, click on your chat box, make sure it's open. You will see a drop-down menu that says to, and next to it, it may say all panelists or one of the specific panelist hosts. If you could change it to read all panelists instead of a specific one of us, that would be great. Since we take turns who's monitoring the chat, if it goes to all panelists, we'll make sure that one of us sees it, and we'll be able to address any questions or comments that you have. We may ask you to chat into the chat box when we're doing a poll or asking a question. Please do so, and we will share it with the group as time allows us. And then we'll take time at the end of the presentation to answer any questions that you have and that we don't get to during the webinar. That is the overview of WebEx. So next we're going to take a quick look at our objectives for the day. So we spent a lot of time over the last few months talking about how to manage remote staff and remote teams. And now suddenly we're transitioning again away from the remote work and starting to think about going back to the office. So some of you have already started moving staff back into your office, but some of you may just be starting to do the plan to do it now. And while a lot of people may have spent some time with the logistical aspects of the move, considering how to keep people healthy and safe and socially distanced, we wanted to spend some time today thinking about the leadership and supervision aspects of the transition. So today we'll talk about ways to evaluate the remote working experiment of the last few months. We'll look at how to measure what worked and what didn't. Next, once we've evaluated what's worked well during remote work, we're going to talk about how we can incorporate those things into this new normal, whatever that may look like for the next couple of months. I don't think any of us are planning to go back to a workplace that looks exactly like it did before the pandemic, so we're going to talk about some strategies we might want to explore for leading a team that has both remote and on-site employees. And then finally, although we're transitioning back and things seem to be better than they have been in the past, few months, at least, the crisis hasn't passed, and there have been some new things happening in our world that have added extra levels of stress to most people. And so we're going to review ways to continue to support staff during unstable and stressful times. Okay, so these key leadership qualities may look familiar to you if you were part of our first webinar, which was called Managing and Supporting Remote Staff. We did that way back in April. And while not every leader has each one of these qualities, good leaders will often exhibit many of them, and we'll be working on the ones that they don't have. Leaders should be realistic and detail-oriented, strategic and decisive. They can be collaborative and adaptable, a communicator, and a relationship builder. These qualities all contribute to making a leader, making them leaders in their position. But I want you to think a little bit about these qualities in relationship to this newest transition. Think about which qualities will be the most important in planning and leading staff through the transition into the next normal, or the new normal. We keep saying the new normal, but I'll call it the next normal for now. In a few seconds, we're going to open a poll, and I want you to choose the top 5 qualities that you think are going to be the most important for a leader to exhibit during the transition. We're going to go ahead and open the poll. The poll is open. We're going to give you just about a minute to answer, so you'll have to do a little bit of quick thinking. Time is about half up, so if you haven't started to choose your leadership qualities, do it now. All right, so the poll is closing now. We're going to give it a couple of seconds to publish the results so we can kind of see what people saw as important qualities. Can we share those results? I know it takes a second. Okay, so if you look at the results, we can see that almost half of everybody thought that realistic was an important leadership quality. That's probably the leading quality versus positive, calm, a communicator, adaptable, strategic, and did I say collaborative already? So those are some pretty strong qualities that will be helpful. Now, before you close out the poll, and you can do that in a second, I want to take a step back and think about what we thought the leadership qualities were that were important in a crisis. Because, so there's sort of two different situations, but we did answer the question before, and if you were on that webinar, you may have voted for qualities again. So what were the qualities that how did the qualities that we've just chosen compare to the ones that we did a couple of months ago? So you'll see back then, participants also chose realistic, calm, a communicator, adaptable, and positive as important qualities. So less important than we're still self-controlled, detail-oriented, and interestingly, relationship builder was both not important in both things. So you can see that while there's a pretty good spread, and in some cases there's no one quality didn't get any votes from anyone in the group. There are some consistent qualities that people see as important, both in a crisis and in a transition. So being realistic, being positive, keeping a calm demeanor, being collaborative, helping to communicate. And so we're gonna talk about some of those strategies today. and as we work through the webinar. So for most of us, we spent the last 9 to 12 weeks in a giant experiment into remote work. Some workplaces may have had an existing policy allowing people to work from home, but many offices didn't have any remote work policy before this. So just by the nature of victim services, it may have been really hard to imagine back then a way that people could both provide services and not be working on site in the agency offices. And then suddenly we're doing exactly that. Victim service agencies were providing services remotely. So in many ways, we spent the last 9 to 12 weeks as a pilot program into remote work. And as is important with any new program that you start, it's important to evaluate the results of what's been tested. So we're going to talk about how to evaluate the experience that the team had as a whole into remote work, and then we're going to look at the impact that the remote work may have had on performance of individual staff members. And finally, we're going to think about how we can incorporate the opinions and findings of our staff members into our evaluation. So those are the 3 things we're going to look at when we talk about evaluating our remote experience. And the first thing we want to look at is how the remote working experience went for your team as a whole. So you're going to be evaluating this at this point from your own perspective, and maybe from the perspective of other supervisors and leaders within your program. So what have you been able to observe and note over the course of the past few months? The first thing you want to think about is the transition itself. You're about to go through another transition, and it's important to take a step back and think about what things may have made the first transition especially smooth. You know, what were the things that worked well? And then what were the things and the transition issues that you maybe didn't anticipate, but you might want to consider as you go into this next transition. These things might be how easy it was to switch people's schedules, what communication methods were most effective and what communication methods didn't work. How long did it take your staff to adapt to the transition itself before they started working as a team together, or team as a team again? And so, you know, think about these things a little bit as you consider, you know, what worked the last time. So as you start to consider your next transition, you know what you might want to consider. Next, we want to note the positive things that came out of the remote working experience. You might have found that there have been some gains in the way the team communicates, and maybe how responsive they are to each other. There may have been positive effects related to the efforts that they have made to connect with each other. So make note of those things because you won't want to lose them once you have transitioned all or some of your workforce back to the office. On the other hand, there may have been some new issues that have developed during the COVID-19 crisis. It may be that while everybody is doing their individual job really well, the team's not working as well together on the whole. They're not working together as a team. Or maybe you sense that there are new tensions or conflicts that have developed among team members. Just because we're going back to the office does not mean that these new issues will go away. Understand what the issues are so you can address them going forward. And then since early March, most of us have gotten used to and fully adopted technology tools and other strategies that we weren't using before. So which are the tools that have been most successful? Did you adopt a virtual meeting platform? Have you been using instant messaging to connect? Are you sharing your documents in a different way or sharing your data in a different way? So which are those that are the most successful that you might want to hang on to, and which might you want to replace or abandon once you're partially or fully back in the office? And then finally, think about the things that have been missing. Well, I think most of us have been really impressed with how well everybody has adapted to the remote work environment. There are aspects of the way we connect as a team that might have been lost in the last few months. So which of those are the most glaring in your opinion? As you bring back people to the office, think about which are the things that you want to reintroduce from the old way of doing things as quickly as possible, and which are the things that you may not need to reintroduce at all. So in addition to thinking about your team experience as a whole, it's a really good time right now to take a step back and evaluate how individual staff functions have operated and how individual staff members have performed while working remotely. As we begin to think about moving some, but not necessarily all, staff members back to the office, it's important to think about which jobs and which staff members have been most successful in the remote environment and which functions and staff members have been less successful. So first, think about the staff positions themselves, the tasks and the functions. Most of the victim service work might be best done in a face-to-face environment. You may still feel that way, but there are definitely some tasks that can be more easily done from anywhere. So, think about which are those tasks, and are there specific jobs that are comprised mostly of tasks that can be done remotely, or does each job have some tasks that can be done remotely and some tasks that are best done face-to-face or in the office? On the other hand, there are some job tasks and functions that really are much better in person. And so which are the tasks that you want to see back in person sooner rather than later? Next, evaluate your individual staff members and how they have adapted to working in the remote environment. Which of your staff struggled to be productive while working from home, either because they had work styles that led themselves they're just better in an office environment, or maybe because their home work environments provided too many distractions, or they had too many interruptions, or just they maybe had too many other competing responsibilities that they had to do at home. These may be the staff who will be better off in the office long term if they're able to return. But on the other hand, some staff members may have found that the home work environment was a much easier place to be productive. Maybe they didn't have other people that they needed to care for, or maybe they just do better when they don't have a lot of office distractions. These are the staff that may continue to be more productive if they're able to benefit from the continued opportunity to work from home. And finally, while you may have already thought about how staff members work together as a team, you will want to think about how engaged each staff member was during the remote pilot. Some people became super responsive and they were available whenever you needed them, but others might have been harder to track down. All of these factors will help you think about how you consider bringing different staff members back to the office, who is best remote and who maybe needs to be in an office setting. Well, we don't want to do all of this just based on our own impressions. So the final piece of the evaluation process that I want to talk about today is getting input from the staff themselves. You might think that you have a good handle on how the staff felt about working remotely because they've been sharing it with you, but it's still important to ask the questions. So find out whether they think the remote environment has given them new strategies and tools that they think will continue to be beneficial to themselves and to the organization. You'll want to know whether they really enjoyed working remotely or if they're desperate to come back to the office. Every transition can cause stress and anxiety for some people, and this current transition is no different. The idea of returning to a public workplace may be especially stressful for certain of your staff members. So you'll want to have a solid read on how high those anxiety levels are and for which staff people. Different people might have a different read on what the workplace is going to look like when they get back to the office. And I'm not talking about the safety precautions here. There is a lot of information out there about those. I'm talking more about how the team will work together, how much autonomy they might have, and how things might have changed from the way that they were when you were in the office in January. Understanding those expectations will be key in how you deliver your message about the transition plan. You can collect this information from staff in a variety of ways, and one way to gather a lot of information and quickly and to do it anonymously is to use a SurveyMonkey tool or another online survey tool and do a staff survey for the whole staff. These surveys are relatively quick to set up, and the tool does the analysis work for you. Another way to do it is to set aside a team meeting to explore some of these questions. The meeting serves as a bit of a focus group, and the team members will be able to build off each other's thoughts. At the end of a webinar, Alan will talk about how he or I might be able to help you design or facilitate either a survey or a team meeting. Finally, you can meet individually with your staff. This will give staff members more privacy to raise individual concerns and fears that they have about that transition, and it will allow you to ask some follow-up questions. But of the three, this will be the most time-consuming, and it probably will be the most time-consuming, but will give you maybe more rich detail and more detailed information than you would have had otherwise. So once you've collected all of this information about the remote work experience, you'll be better able to build an effective plan to transition into the new normal. And Alan is now going to lead you through building that plan.
Thanks, Jenny. One of the key leadership qualities you rated on the poll today was being realistic. So it's important to work from solid data as you plan your new normal. And now that you have some of the data, if you follow the steps that Jenny has outlined, it's time to begin building this new process. You've evaluated the remote experience, you've identified some strategies that worked well, You also identified important pieces that were missing and evaluated how well your staff worked in the remote environment. And you got their input about returning to the workplace. So with all that in mind, let's look at how to design this transition to get the best results. We're going to discuss how to think through deploying your staff and steps to take in guiding them through this change. Let's start with your staffing plan. The first thing to figure out is how many staff can safely operate in your office at any one time. Most organizations have begun to sort this out. If you haven't, now's the time to start. As Jenny said, there's a lot of information out there, and we're not going to go through that here. But based on the data you collected and your knowledge of the program, think about which staff roles are most important to return to the workplace, and prioritize that when considering your capacity to safely house people at work. Identify who has strong reasons to continue working remotely due to issues such as childcare or health issues. If any of them play roles that need to return to the office, are there other staff that can switch with them? Or could they come in maybe for only limited times? Also identify who would like to continue working remotely. Can you accommodate them at least part of the time? Be sure you're aware of how much flexibility your agency will give you in terms of people continuing to work from home. Think about what would continue to work well if these people were working remotely and what might be lost in that process. Now review your assessment of who worked most effectively from home and who you think would be more productive in the office environment. While we want to accommodate people's needs and wants, the bottom line has to be what we need to do to provide the best services to our clients. From this assessment, begin to develop a plan that addresses your agency's policy in terms of remote work and best addresses the needs and concerns of both staff and clients. Your plan should promote program effectiveness and productivity to best meet your mission and goals. While it probably will not be possible to fully meet everyone's needs, it's important to try to address as many as possible, keeping within agency policy and aiming for maximum program effectiveness. One way to meet possible space limitations, as well as staff scheduling issues, and perhaps even client availability issues, would be to think about staggered work hours over a potentially longer workday, so fewer people are in the office at any one time, and people can travel outside rush hour if they use public transit. Rather than trying to build this structure working with a full staff team, it's usually most efficient for a small management team to work on designing this based on the input you receive from your staff. Once you have developed an initial plan, then it's important to present it to your staff. You can do this in a team setting if you think the resistance will not be too strong. Otherwise, it may be best to do this individually. You know as you develop the plan which parts staff will be supportive of and where there may be resistance. Be sure to think about and be able to clearly state why you made the decisions you did. Anticipate how each staff person will react to the plan and have a clear explanation for the areas where you anticipate resistance. It's important to take the time to be a patient and active listener as you share this with staff, making sure they know that you fully hear their concerns and objections. If you hear some new ideas that you think might be workable, let them know you'll take some time to think about that and get back to them. Don't make any decisions until you've heard from all the staff and had a chance to discuss this with the leadership team. If you do make changes, be sure to let everyone know. Once the plan is finalized and ready to be implemented, it's important to be very clear about what is expected from the staff overall and from each person individually. Be very specific about what each person's work hours will be and how often you expect them to check in with you. This is especially important for people who are continuing to work remotely. Let them know which of the new policies that were developed under the earlier remote working conditions will continue and which ones will change. Once you've presented the new staffing plan, talk about which projects or tasks you see as having the highest priority for each person and which may need to go on the back burner. There may have been things that were put off while working remotely that need to be addressed more urgently now. As you have this conversation, link it back to your agency and program's mission and core values. Mission and values should be the touchstones you use to make your decisions, to set priorities, and to solve problems. Anytime you implement a new strategy, there are bound to be some unintended consequences or unforeseen difficulties that can sidetrack the process. You want to encourage them to come to you with any problems they identify, and also ask them to bring thoughts about any possible solutions to these problems. As you and your team work through this transition, remember that, as in any time of change, clear and frequent communication is crucial to success. This was also rated high on the poll today. You want to check in regularly to make sure everyone understands the new policies and performance expectations, and that they are carrying them out effectively. Some check-ins may work best on an individual basis, and others may be best with the full team. In all cases, you want to be a careful and active listener, making sure you fully understand what people are thinking and feeling about the new normal. As part of your new process, be sure you have communication strategies that will address the hybrid situation of some people working remotely and others working on site. You want to find methods that are efficient and effective in keeping people connected. This will promote collaboration and reduce miscommunication and excess meeting time. You're not simply returning to the way things were. Most likely you're going to continue in some sort of hybrid status, with some people working remotely, some working on site, and perhaps many working partially in each. So you're crafting a new framework that should draw from the best of how things were before the crisis, as well as successful strategies developed during the remote time. Two key strategies that many agencies have refined over the last few months are ways for people who are working remotely to stay connected and feel part of a team, and also new time management strategies that have helped people be more productive in what is also often a distractive environment. Be sure you carry these forward into your new normal. We're going to take a minute and give you a chance to share in the chat box. As you think about this past time of working remotely, what new practices did you or your team develop that you might want to continue with in a hybrid situation? Are there any that would help you work more effectively back on site? So take a minute and type into the chat box any thoughts you have about things you've learned, things you've developed that are particularly effective that you want to hang on to as you move into your new normal. And make sure you chat to all panelists if you chat. Okay, someone said regular meetings. It's important to keep people in paper. Don't need all the paper. Yes, so we've managed to work electronically and keep track of things. Daily morning check-in with the unit as well as weekly meetings. More meetings with them and check-ins that have nothing to do with work, and it feels very normal. Okay, so again, in times of stress, it's important to check in about non-work stuff. Weekly staff meetings instead of monthly, some more frequent. Telehealth, weekly check-ins with staff. Telecommuting works. We did a morning check-in, which was nice because I got to see how everyone was doing and talk about any issues. Using Zoom through text. Using Zoom to meet was helpful. Daily morning check-in through text. We had a daily check-in. It's been great. Many of our staff is co-located and not together often. Daily and weekly check-ins, use of technology. Okay, meetings can be succinct, less time needed. So we're having a lot more meetings now, and if you're able to keep them nice and short, then they provide a great service. More informal communication. And okay, great. So a lot of great strategies. And so as Jenny said, we've been in a kind of an experimental mode, and we learn things, and that's great to know. Okay, so along with these new strategies, you certainly want to bring back old strategies that worked well in an on-site environment. Some can be brought back as is, and others need to be adapted to fit the new hybrid environment. As always, the key criteria is how does this enhance your mission and help you meet your goals? What will help you stay true to your core values, and which strategies provide the best services to your clients? And to be effective, your staff have to feel safe, comfortable, and supported in the new normal. This is a tall order, and we probably won't get it right the first time. So as you begin to address these changes, make sure you're listening to and monitoring both your staff and your clients. You want to identify early any issues that might need to be further addressed. As the transition unfolds, It's important to continue to assist the strength of your team and identify any areas of concern, conflict, or stress. During a time of significant change, such as this, people's reaction to their environment can also shift rapidly. So keep your antenna up and stay close to your staff so you can catch any issues early and resolve them. As we said earlier, some issues are best addressed individually and others addressed with the whole team. So you all just talked about how you have a lot of individual check-ins and lots of team meetings. So you have opportunities to address these in both settings. Be thoughtful and strategic about how you bring them up. And even if you're not yet beginning this transition to a new hybrid environment, you should start planning now to gather staff input and think about how you might want to move forward. I'm going to turn it back to Jenny to talk about how you can support staff during this transitionary period.
Thanks, Alan. It would help if I unmute myself. So the final part of our webinar is about supporting staff. And if you were part of our Managing and Supporting Remote Staff webinar in April, then you might find that some of this stuff sounds pretty familiar. And it will be, because it's as important now as it was then that you find ways to continue to provide support to your staff. Think about ways to improve their motivation and ways to boost their morale. So as I said, in some ways, this newest transition may be as anxiety-producing and stressful as the beginning of the pandemic. There is as many unknowns now as there were before, and the road forward may not feel either clear or smooth. So you want to continue to provide that direct support to staff that Alan mentioned, and that was so important in March and April. It's still important now. And while you may have backed off a little in the last few weeks from the daily check-ins and maybe asking staff how they were feeling and how they were doing, as Alan said, once you've implemented your new transition plan and people are back in the office, either part or full-time, it's time to start checking in with them again and asking them how they're doing, making time to fully listen to how they respond, summarizing and paraphrasing back what you hear, and asking open questions so that they know that you're actively listening to what they're saying. You want to take a few minutes every time you check in by phone or check in on video and give them a chance to share whatever's on their mind. Next, there's likely to be a new disruption to productivity and workflow again. So safety protocols may take more time than you anticipated, and their own concerns about their safety or about their family arrangements might be causing some stress. And staff will probably be adopting new work processes again because because this new normal is different than the old normal. So continue to stay focused on what needs to be accomplished and still be open to new ways to get there. Facilitate problem solving by helping your staff think through and explore options to deal with the new issues and roadblocks that they encounter. You don't necessarily have to, you don't want to tell them how to do something. You want to help them find their own solution to what's going to work for them. Be supportive and patient, but also be upbeat and optimistic. You really want to encourage that can-do attitude and culture in your staff. It may be exciting to be going back to the office for some people and to be out of the house again. But for those people who don't want to be back or who are overwhelmed with the changes they see, you may see that their motivation and morale is going to plummet again. So we're going to review some of the ways to increase motivation and to boost morale. So in the terms of motivation, first, people want their work to have purpose and meaning and feel like it's making a difference. And there may be an increased need in your community for services and possibly reduced resources. And with that, the staff may feel like they are facing a real uphill battle right now. So be able to help your staff focus by creating an immediate mission. So as Alan just pointed out, mission and core values are really important. And what you may want to do is think of an immediate mission, which is a single purpose that may be narrower than your overall mission or the overall mission for your program or for your organization. But it's one thing that you're ensuring is going to happen during these transition months. And you may have had an immediate mission that you did during the first part of the crisis. And back then, your immediate mission may have been keeping your clients connected. Now it might be reconnecting clients or reaching new victims that have come up, that have seen an increase since the pandemic started. Think of this immediate mission as a rallying cry for your work. And as Alan said, continue to focus on your core values with staff. So whatever your core values might be, they may be victim sensitive, collaboration, or inclusivity. These are all core values that you may have already defined for your programs. And how will you keep these values at the front and center of what you do as you make this newest change to how you do business? The immediate mission and core values will help you connect people and what they're doing and how they're doing it back to what the program is trying to achieve as a whole right now. Secondly, remember that everyone will be adjusting or responding differently in the transition, and they may be responding and reacting differently than they did back in March. So make an effort to really connect individually with each person. Alan mentioned it before, and I'm going to repeat it here because it really can give you a sense of how they're relating, and then you'll be able to motivate them better by understanding how you can get the best from them based on where they are mentally right now. The third thing we have here is see the work that people are doing and give positive feedback. So when we say see it, what we mean is that in order to motivate people, it's important to be specific about what you're saying, what they're doing. Instead of just saying great job, you want to tell them exactly what you've seen them do and an impact of that behavior and those actions, and what the impact has been on the team and the program's immediate mission and on the mission as a whole. And then finally, as Alan mentioned earlier, the transition plan may create tensions and resentment within the staff members at the office. So that if you do hear there's dissatisfaction, or if you think that there's any misinformation circulating, act quickly to correct it. Uncertainty and misinformation can lead to anxiety and low motivation among your employees. Like with motivation, getting back to a more regular normal may be a morale boost for some people. But there are other things like budget cuts, new schedules, and constant change that may end up hurting morale. In most places, not everyone will be back in the office together. Work schedules and social distancing rules will prevent that. So if over the past few months you have implemented opportunities for staff to connect socially, but remotely on a regular basis, you want to try and think about keeping those in place so you can continue to get the entire team together. We may be tempted to take some of those away because people are in the office and seeing each other, but because not everybody will be there at the same time, it's important to continue to find ways to connect the entire team. So when you start a team meeting, you may still want to take a few minutes to go around and have people share something about how they're doing, how the transition back to the office is working, or maybe something funny or a feat that they've seen or heard that they want to share. This will continue to allow people to feel connected to each other, whether they're in the office or if they're still remote. What we don't want to do is make those people who can't come back to the office feel like they're not connected. So, finding ways to make sure everybody is connected will help boost their morale and keep them motivated. But now we do have an opportunity to think about ways that we might be able to create some socially distanced but in-person opportunities to get together. So consider some outside staff lunches or coffee breaks if you have the space to do it. And that way people can connect again in person as a team. And finally, as a leader, while it's important to maintain a focus on getting work done, it's also important to help your staff maintain their emotional health, especially those dealing directly with clients in crisis and those people who are under stress. So continue to encourage them to take breaks as needed, to reach out to each other, and to you for support, just as they've been doing while they were remote. Listen carefully for signs of significant stress and encourage wellness activities that can help boost their morale and counter the current stress that they might be feeling. So before we proceed, we're going to take another opportunity to stop and think. And I want you to share in the chat box some of the strategies that you think might help boost motivation and morale for your team as you transition through the next couple months. You maybe have started them already because you've started the transition, or there are things that you're thinking about doing. Again, we'll take a couple moments to type those strategies into the chat box so you can share them with everybody. Remember to use all panelists. Does anybody have any? Okay, so incorporating more online offerings in terms of training, technical assistance, and telehealth. Making sure everyone knows it's okay to feel unsure and that it's important to support one another. I think we did a great job of that before, but again, it's important to continue it. self-care and wellness, making sure that you're transitioning back slowly so that people can get used to it, giving positive feedback and constructive criticism, continue a remote social hour started at the beginning of remote work. I think that's a great idea. And a social and emotional temperature check with employees. That's a quick way. That can be a really good quick way to go around and find out. Thank employees when possible for their patience, cooperation, and collaboration. Work collaboratively with staff so they feel part of the change and not just swept up in the current. So I think that's great. Support when work increases. Add additional days off for sustainability. So that's a great benefit if you're able to do that. Staff are encouraged to use a vacation day when needed, since a stretch of days is not encouraged. Team building, weekly check-ins with supervisors, send specific emails if an employee goes beyond expectations to thank and acknowledge them. That's a great idea. Highlighting successes and multiple challenges. Having staff investigate their own training opportunities so that they feel motivated to do something new, and brainstorming with staff about what they want to continue to do. And what they've missed from pre-COVID. So I think, so some of those strategies are ways that you're already beginning to evaluate and think about what you want to bring back and what's working. So I think those are all really great suggestions. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Alan.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. So you all have been managing in a time of crisis for the last few months, and now you're entering a new phase which brings new stresses and challenges. In addition, someone put in the chat box that the racial violence in your communities doesn't make any of this any easier. So, in fact, this adds yet another level of stress for you, for your clients, and for your staff. As a wrap-up to this session, we want to review briefly some key strategies that we've talked about today and in previous webinars about managing in a time of crisis. Being a careful and active listener is job one for any leader in a crisis. You need to hear people's concerns and acknowledge their experience and their reality. Because things change rapidly, you want to check in on a regular basis, again, as many of you put in the chat box there, both individually and with your team as a whole. Somebody talked about a temperature check, emotional temperature check, and letting you know how finding how people are feeling and providing support you can. And when someone is temporarily unable to fulfill their job, you want to think about what kind of flexibility you can offer them and what kind of support is available from your agency. It could include a referral to EAP, it could be temporarily reduced work hours, additional support from other staff, or temporarily reducing or redistributing their work while they catch up with whatever is going on in their life. As a leader in the Victim Assistance Program, you always have the emotional burden of listening to staff in distress from the stressful work they do with their clients. As a leader in a crisis, you take on an additional load of dealing with staff issues related to the significant added stress in their personal lives. You want to pay attention to each of your team members' overall situations and be aware of anything that is causing them additional stress. It's important to create safe spaces for people to be able to share both their work and non-work concerns, again, as many of you put in the chat box, and know they'll get support. The more you can build the support across your team, the less you have to take it on all by yourself. And the more supported people will feel if everyone on the team is coming together to support each other. You want to be clear with your agency leadership as to what degree of support you can offer and how much flexibility you have available. And finally, it's critical to continue to practice self-care, set boundaries, and take time to ensure that you have the emotional strength to carry this out. As Blake mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, this webinar is part of the Training and Technical Assistance Request Program, which is providing a wide range of support to OVS-funded agencies at no cost to your agency. We provide training, leadership coaching, and organizational consulting on a wide range of topics, which can be found on the OVS website. And if you scroll down on that page, you'll see a link to our catalog of services, which gives a lot more information about what we can offer. Some examples of services we can offer remotely include helping you design and then facilitate a staff team building retreat as staff who have been isolated begin to re-engage. We're becoming masters of Zoom and can do a lot remotely. We can also help design and facilitate planning retreats to help think through the issues we discuss in this webinar today, leading to a plan for a new way forward. We've also provided a wide range of customized training focusing on leadership topics, as well as communication and time management, to help you successfully transition back to the workplace. We've provided individual coaching to many leaders of victim assistance programs to help them sort through challenges they face, both in day-to-day work as well as managing through these crises. At the bottom of the slide is a list of some additional leadership training topics we have provided to OVS-funded agencies. During this crisis, OVS has made us available on an ad hoc basis to provide individual coaching to managers and leaders of funded agencies. We can serve as an independent sounding board for you to bounce off ideas and concerns during this transition. We can also help you explore new strategies to more effectively lead your team. If you'd like to find out more about this or sign up for this coaching, go to the calendar link on your screen to set up an initial session to explore whether this would be of value for you. All coaching sessions are completely confidential. No application is needed, and there's no charge for this service. We're coming to the end of this webinar, and for those of you that need to leave early, please fill out the evaluation that will pop up on your screen when we leave this session. We really value your feedback. We're going to stay on and answer any questions that anyone may have. Please write your questions in the chat box now, and we'll respond to them before we sign off. You can also email us your questions, or if you'd like to find out more about the additional services we offer. You can also set up a phone call with us to talk about our services by going to the calendar link. I'm going to turn it over to Blake to wrap up our session, and then Jenny and I will be back to answer your questions. Please type your questions in the chat box now, and we'll respond to them in just a minute.
Well, thank you, Alan. I want to thank Jenny and Alan for putting together today's webinar. As Alan just mentioned, please do not forget to complete your webinar evaluation survey. They really do help us out, and they take less than 2 minutes. So please, when you exit, take advantage of that for us. Also, join us next week. We have another webinar coming up on coping with loss and grief. And that webinar and the rest of the webinars in this Transitions Forward series is all listed on our website, again, at ovs.ny.gov/training. So if some of you want to take off, great. Thank you for joining us. But if you want to stick around, we're happy to jump into some Q&A.
It looks like the first question that maybe came in earlier was a question about how to manage the fact that extra work is likely to flood in once things are back to normal. So how can we prepare and support staff for this? So we may have found that things have been quieter lately, and so there's maybe a lot of work that we've put off. And then, I think we've heard that there has been an increase in need for services, so that may flood in. So one of the things that you may want to work with your staff on is time management and priority setting. So we did do a time management webinar a few weeks ago. That's still on the link. So you may want to look through that, but, helping brainstorm with your staff on, what are the priorities, how much work can be accomplished, and, where the limits are. So you may not be able to do everything. People are going to have to manage their time. And as we said, some things may just take longer than we thought they were going to because of new protocols. So really brainstorming with staff about what their priorities are, what are the things that need to get accomplished, and are there other things that can go on the back burner? Alan, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I just think it's a good point that a number of people I've been coaching with have talked about how things were slow because there were a lot they couldn't do, and now all of a sudden they're going to have to ramp up, and not just the people who are coming back to work, but the people working remotely are going to have more work as more things get processed through. So I think it's a great caution to put out to people if you've been in a slow stage that you're going to be ramping up and they need to gear up and step up for it.
Mm-hmm. I just shared a link to the time management webinar.
Oh, great.
Okay, great. So there's another question here. We average 1,700 clients a year. How can we manage this volume with half our staff working remotely? And again, do you have to have half your staff working remotely? I know that there needs to be social distancing in the workplace, but the idea of potentially lengthening your work day, not for any individual person, but the agency is open for longer day hours so that people can come and go and still stay separate, but more people could be in the office. Can you find additional sites for people to do the work? So there are, unfortunately, many businesses that are going out of business. There may be office space in your community that is available that you could get for no cost. The landlord has it empty anyway, or as a community service, or low cost. So ways to think about expanding, and then doing what you can remotely. Maybe the remote staff can pick up more of the paperwork, more of the back office work, and the staff who are at the office can do more of the direct client work, which is, I think, what you're talking about, the volume that you need. So I guess there's a lot of parts. Jenny, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, and then you may just have to have a conversation about capacity. So, so your capacity is reduced possibly because you have staff working remotely, just as if you had gone through a budget cut and you had lost staff members. So maybe you may be forced to have a question about, can we continue to serve 1,700 clients a year? Is there a way that we can continue to serve them but change a little bit the type of service that they're getting? So you may not be serving them as completely as you would like to, or as you've been able to do in the past. But it just, realistically, you may have to have that conversation about how is the new normal, the way the staffing pattern is going to change what you're able to do. Just like you had that same conversation in March when you moved everybody off site. There were things that that you had to change related to how you offered services. So we're not totally back to normal. So you're going to continue to need to have those conversations about how much service you can provide, what that service looks like, and what is the best practice for doing it. They're tough conversations, but I think that they're conversations that you'll need to have.
And the other thing, I would encourage you not to just try to solve this at the management level. I did say that a management team should develop the plan, but it's based on input from the staff, and then it's dialogue back with the staff. So this is a problem. Bring to a staff meeting, have people brainstorm, think creatively, try to get outside the box. How can we, serve all these clients? There's a great need out there, and we're only going to be half staffed in the office, and they may come up with some brilliant ideas. So it's great, the more people brainstorming, the more ideas that pop up, and listen to your clients, and they may have other ways that they feel they could be served, or maybe again outside of normal business hours or in different locations, and who knows what else they might come up with. So I think it is a tough challenge, and to get more minds thinking about it is a great strategy. We're happy to stay on for another few minutes if anybody else has any questions. We don't see any. Oh, here comes one. So again, keep typing them in as you go, and we'll answer them as we can. Oh no, there was just another link to the survey, the evaluation. Okay, yeah. So we really would appreciate your feedback. Want to know what you liked about today and any ways we could make it better.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've had a lot of complimentary comments. People enjoyed it, found it valuable, and we appreciate your positive feedback. Again, we'll wait another minute or two, see if any other questions pop up.
And Ginny and Alan will join us in 2 weeks, right, for motivating staff in the new normal.
Mm-hmm. Right, so Jenny talked a little bit about that today, and we'll go into a lot more depth in that webinar.
Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah, I don't see anything else. Rachel, you don't have any questions going directly to you?
I do not.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
It takes us about a day to get today's webinar recording uploaded to our YouTube channel, but we'll make sure to send everyone an email link with all of that.
There is just one question just popped up. Staff are just getting comfortable working remotely. How long will the new normal take? Be very cognizant that people have gone through an extremely stressful experience of working from home in the middle of a major health crisis, and they're finally sort of getting used to it, and things are opening up. They're feeling a little more comfortable. Now suddenly there's a new normal, and that's, some people do well with change and love it, and most people find it very stressful and difficult. So it will take several months to sort it out, to think about it, to try it out, find the bugs, and and work them out. And who knows? Nobody knows what the fall will bring. Will there be another spike? Is this almost over? And so the new normal is a moving target. So just be very cognizant that a lot of your staff are going to feel very stressful as they have to keep changing and keep doing things they've never done and never even thought about doing. No one ever conceived of this type of a life. So, it will take time. So thanks for that comment.
Yeah. I don't see anything else. Well, let's sign off, you guys. Thank you again to Jenny and Alan, and join us in the next week for our next webinar, and we're happy to be there for you guys. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.